You know, my preaching professor always said that no matter how long you preach, or how many years you preach, that every time you stand up to preach, your heart will be pounding out of your chest because of what you're getting ready to do. That's what's happening right now. It's been 3 weeks since I've preached. And you know what? No matter how long it's been, even if it's Sunday to Sunday, there's still this holy fear that comes when you hear the scripture being read, and can you be faithful to its delivery? So I start out by offering a word of prayer for the awesome task that's before us. Will you join me? Oh Lord, may the words of our mouths, my mouth, and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Well, I kind of revealed to you through the children's sermon how I wanted to start my own sermon. In addition to vintage shopping and books of every ilk, you now know another passion that I have is for all things pen and paper. I love stationery shops. I love stamps. I love beautiful pens, with those with cockatiels on them, or those with beautiful flowers on them, and those that have refills that you need to put in every so often because you use one that you've loved particularly well. I love calligraphy, pens and paper and parchment. When I graduated from my undergrad school back in 1983 at Emory and Henry College in Emory, Virginia, one of the first things that I did is I signed up for an adult education class at the local high school on calligraphy. And so I still have some of my favorite calligraphy papers and parchments, and I still have the original pen that I used to create what I thought then was a masterpiece, and it's probably not so much so. And even though I still have those loves, the ink has long dried up. I still frequent the paper source in the Bridgeport Village, and the branches, uncommon cards and curious finds in Selwood, and one I intend to get to is the Ekru Modern Stationer in the Eclectic Pearl District. But I know my Achilles heel, and I know that a collar and leash is what best guides me as I go into those places, or I go in them infrequently. I doubt that Paul had that kind of penchant for pen and paper that I do. His penchant was for the church. It was for the people who comprised it, and it was that they not be dissuaded from their mission, which was to speak boldly in the name of Jesus Christ. With the expanse of communication available today, and with the introduction of all kinds of ways of sharing through technology and the relational field of social media, I still prefer vis-a-vis, face-to-face conversations with people. I really like them if they're over coffee, but I'll do them anyway. I don't know about you, especially when I face difficult situations, troubling situations, brokenness between myself and another. I really prefer to have those conversations face to face. I'm curious how it is with you. When you have difficult times with people, do you prefer face to face, or would you rather email, or do you just not address it at all because it's too painful? What?
Face to
face. Depends on the person and the relationship that you have with them. Sometimes we avoid because it's just easier. Some of us don't like, I don't like conflict, but I would rather resolve something than not, if I can. You've likely heard the English proverb, it's easier to catch flies with honey. And you know what comes after that? Then vinegar. Do you know where that came from? You probably won't be surprised when you hear it. It first appeared in the U.S. in Benjamin Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac. For 26 years, from 1732 to 1758, this almanac sold incredible amounts of copies, even in the 13 colonies. It has a mixture of seasonal forecasts, practical household hints, and puzzles and other amusements. Poor Richard, or Richard Saunders, who was Benjamin Franklin's pseudonym, was also popular for its popular use of wordplay. Quippy little sayings, just like the Solomon's Proverbs, for example. And some of those things still stay with us. We still use some of those things from the Proverbs and from Poor Richard's Almanac we didn't even know. In my grandfather's study, he had one of those old almanac calendars on his wall. Did any of you farmers' almanac? Any of you familiar with that? I used to love to look at the projections of the phasal moon. And there were all kinds of quotes and fun things, and Granddaddy would sit me on his knee and we would talk about it and what it meant. I loved that calendar. I say all of that to say this. Paul must have been channeling some Ben Franklin when he was in his rhetoric class in the first century in the synagogue, because he needed to learn. Because of the tensions and the posturing that was going on in the Corinthian church, he needed to teach them something, and he knew the only way he was going to be able to approach it is if he took a positive approach with them first before he called them out on some of their stuff. It's easier to catch flies with honey. Paul, I think, was an emotionally intelligent person. He was a person who knew his congregants, and in order to get them to listen to hard things, he knew that first he had to tell them how much he loved them, how much he honored them, how much he believed in them and the Jesus at work within them. Otherwise, they would not hear him. I don't know how up-to-date you are with Mediterranean letter practices in the days of Paul. Probably not, you don't need to be. But suffice it to say, it was culturally and politically charged because the Roman Empire had great, expansive power. They had moved into Asia and Africa as far as modern-day India, and along with their movement, they exported their language and their culture. And the language of that day became Koine Greek. It was the lingua franca of the world at that time. And Paul, the good Jew, learned how to write in Koine Greek because he wanted to relate to the people in their own language. And so when you look at this letter, it's like any letter of introduction that Paul would offer to any of his churches. It starts out with a greeting, I, Paul the Apostle, and to the brother Sosthenes. It's debated who he is, but thought that he was a leader within that church and congregation, and so he was named in the letter. He then greets the church, and then finally he sends a greeting to all who will read and hear the letter. By letter writing standards of that day, that greeting was considered a bit long and wordy, like Paul tends to be. Some of my friends say he never had a published thought. I don't believe that he did. So he gives lots of extra time and attention to that greeting, and he also does something really beautiful. He calls out with them their beautiful Christian witness, and he says to them, I believe in you, I know that God is at work within you, and he's going to continue this work in you until the very end. And you know why he's doing all that. He's getting ready to roll up his sleeves and light it out. Come to Jesus, talk with him. The Corinthian church in particular really liked to posture, well, I've got this spiritual gift and you don't. Remember we talked about when they would come to the communion table and some of them would arrive early and they would eat the communion food before the others could come and have communion? They also struggled a lot with immorality. And so Paul has a lot that he's getting ready to say to them, but he knows that it's easier to catch flies with honey. And so he starts out commending in them the beautiful things that he sees and understanding that they are worthy and they are capable of living the life and the mission that Christ has charged them to live. Across the board, folks, we know this, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to be told again, that criticism is always received a lot easier if positive affirmation precedes it. Always. That's true for a child on up to an adult. Truthful affirmation, not syrupy manufactured affirmation, but when you have something difficult to say, to start out with something that's positive before you lie into the things that are problematic, at least problematic from the way you see it. So I want to offer this protocol for maybe the way Paul would have encouraged his churches and that we would encourage churches today. At first, when we offer criticism, let it always be constructive. And let it be with the aim of helping others be the best they can be. Let it also be helping bring something to somebody's awareness that they may not be aware of. Or maybe they're aware of it and they don't realize that how far the negative effects of that behavior is affecting people. Third, let's take the matter directly to the source. Telling your friends doesn't help anything. It just creates dissension. Take it directly to the source if you can. And then if they won't listen to you, back to Jesus, not to make one feel bad, but to verify and to offer possibility for greater solution. Next, refrain from gossip. It doesn't help anything. It only stirs the pot. And here's the other thing. Be careful before you get caught up in a tale and spin untruths. Unless you know the full story, please don't spin it. There are so many things that happen in the church that are confidential and that we're not allowed to talk about. If you have questions, please go to your source and let them be the guide for you. Be willing to seek out the truth as best as you can, and don't participate in spreading untruths. It only hurts the church. I like to call this kind of protocol keeping it real, getting a grip, do an impulse check. Because as human beings, we're all going to have issues with each other and in the church. It's just the way we work. We're a diverse community of faith. But let all that we do have love as its aim, and with the aim of restoration, of getting together on the same page and moving forward in peace. I love how Paul commends the Christ that's at work within his congregants. He names that he knows they have the seeds necessary for every spiritual gift to do the work of the church if they will only acknowledge that, stop focusing on themselves and think about what they can do together. I like to think on a Sunday like this that Paul is like a good NFC or AFC coach. To the Titans, to the Chiefs, to the 49ers and the Green Bay Packers, may the best teams win, challenging them to live into and what they are created and trained to be. In this case, to be the church, to be as faithful as we can in the midst of our difficulties and in the midst of our joys. As I think back over my ministry, I think about one of the first encounters that I had with somebody who offered constructive criticism. I was a 22-year-old hotshot right out of undergrad school, thought I had it all together, and had been in church all my life, and so working in the church was a logical thing to do before I went to law school, which never happened, right? But I worked in the church, and so I became the director of Christian education. They never had one, and I'd never been one, so it worked out great. And so I was challenged to work with the youth and the children. And so can you imagine, I was directing the children's choir. I had never done that before. And Shirley B., I'll call her, was my assistant. She was wonderful, and I praised her and thanked her for all the help she gave me. She had 2 children that were in that program along with me and helping those kids. And one day she came to me and she said, I want to just commend you on how great you are in working with our children's choir. They've never sounded this good. And I really think that part of it is the musical training that you've had. But can I say something else to you? I'm not as pleased with how you're working with them in Sunday school and their children's activities. You don't seem to put the time into it. I mean, it doesn't look like you're prepared. And I don't understand why. I know you're trained to do this, and I know you love the kids, so what's the problem? Man, she went to Midland. I did not like it, and my 22-year-old self gathered myself up and said, who do you think you are? I'm trained to do this. And she said, I know you're trained to do it. I don't see the disconnect. And when I got off my high horse and really began to listen to what she said, I had to face the truth about that situation. When I was hired on to be the Christian educator, I really wanted to work with you, not kids. I had more experience with you. I love the kids, but I didn't have experience there. I didn't feel comfortable in that arena. So I kind of swept it off, and she called me out. And I'm so grateful for Shirley B. Because that was the start of my church experience, where someone came to me in love, named my gifts to do this, my training to do this, that I was a good fit for that church, that I was great in working with the pastor, but that she saw there was more potential and that I wasn't living up to it. I am so grateful that she cared enough to do that for a young 22-year-old who thought she had her stuff all together. Anna didn't. Across the years as a pastor, I have faced other situations like that, where I, in my role, have had to call people out because of difficulty or problems, and where they had to do the same for me as pastor. The best thing that we can do is acknowledge that none of us has it all together, and that we can all learn from each other. We're not going to all agree on things, on issues, on doctrine. You're not always going to agree on the administrative decisions I made, or the way I preach, or the way I dress, or the way I wear my hair, or all of those other things. But those things shouldn't matter. We should join together in Christian love and recognize that we're all diverse and beautiful in God's eyes, and keep the protocol in mind. What does it mean to genuinely praise someone before you criticize? What does it mean to help everyone be their best self? To take matters directly to the source, to refrain from gossip, to expect the best. I'm not saying this because anything in particular has happened. I'm saying this because this is what Paul is trying to say to the church at Corinth. I have some tough things to say to you, he says, but first I'm going to look for the best in you and praise you, and then name the things that are difficult. What would happen if the United Methodist Church in its general conference in 2020 in May decided that it was going to take this posture? And really, folks, they already have made that decision. If you were unable to come to our meeting in January last Tuesday night, we're going to offer another one, not this Monday, but next Monday. And Pam has already videoed everything that we did, uploaded documents, worked hours that you might have access to it. What happened is in July of 2019, right after the General Conference, a group of leaders from all over the Methodist Church, globally, with different theological persuasions, came together and narrowed themselves down to 16 candidates that they felt were most representative of the different theological views. And they said, come what may, we know we need a resolution. We know we need a resolution. Can we join together and come up with a protocol that everyone can agree to so that we might amicably separate the church? So that those with strong biblical convictions who read Scripture this way on the LGBTQ issue can be in this camp, and it's okay. We send you on the way with love. And those who see it a different way can stay in their arena, and we can do that in love. This is the closest that we've come in 47 years to coming to a place where we can amicably say, we love you, we bless you, let us go our separate ways. Why is this important, folks? What's at stake? Read the papers. Look at what the world is saying about us. We're fussing and fighting and fuming and gossiping and harming people, and that's not the way of Christ. We all need to roll up our sleeves and look at each other in love and say, what do we need to do to establish loving, peace-filled relationships, no matter what the issue is at hand? Paul's admonition is to get a grip, to do a pulse check, to find a way to live together in love, because the world is watching us, folks. Let us be community to each other, and let our witness be strong to the world. In the weeks to come, I'm going to talk about more letters that Paul wrote to the church and some of the issues he addressed. If you have any particular issue that you'd like to hear me speak on or about or text, please don't hesitate to tell me, and I'll look to see what I can do to bring that to you by God's grace. May God go with us as we seek to live in love and peace, even though we won't all agree. May love be our greatest God.